enjoyed watching Grandma Brown talk about her.
They made a DVD of Grandma Brown's 90th birthday party that we had at our house in the terraces in Corona del Mar.
Who photographed
Phil
it?
must have been. I think Phil had the video camera most of the time.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
It was so
For
funny
her
though.
90th birthday, he had a video camera.
Yeah, somebody did.
It had to have been Phil.
How many years ago was that though? Because Nancy and my mom, he was laughing because they looked so
She
funny.
passed away in 94, wasn't it?
I think so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Was when we moved.
15 years ago.
When we moved, she gave up.
She was 92,
When you
wasn't
moved.
she, honey? Did you say she was 92?
I-
Her dad was only 78.
I think she was going to be 93.
I think she was too. I feel like she was
And they were going to do a
93.
surgery on her, and Phil flew out, and
Didn't she fall and break her hip?
no.
Huh.
She just wouldn't eat.
Oh.
And Phil came out, and they were going to put a tube in, and the doctor was washing up, ready to take her into the operating room, and Phil went out and canceled it.
To give you let you know that was the right thing to do, because there's a lady across the street that's got one in there, and she is 93 years old. She can't talk, and the only thing, and she's in bed all the time, and and all she has is liquid stick, and that is not quality of life.
No.
And the lady one of the ladies that were looking after her that had the power of attorney for health, we went to her memorial service yesterday.
Sunday.
What?
It was the most beautiful service
So
I've ever
nobody
been
has
to.
any power of attorney anymore?
Oh,
her husband is still around.
They had no children.
She had no children.
Oh, okay. So along those same lines, tell us what it was like growing up in the 40s as a teenager.
As a teenager.
Weren't you a teenager in the 40s?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Where they moved so many times, you don't know where you're
Yes.
You were in Minnesota, right?
In the 40s. I'm trying to think.
She started out in
Yes.
Chicago, you know.
Well, the war started in 41. And my dad got a job at Ream Manufacturing, which did manufacture water heaters, but they went into manufacturing things for the Army. So I was in 8th grade and ready to go into high school there in South Dakota. And all of a sudden we were moving out here to Alhambra. And he worked in near Bell, down by Maywood and Bell. I don't think those towns are even there anymore. And I went to Alhambra High School by myself and stood in line, and Del Fry, Doctorman, was in front of me. And we met. And we became best friends through all those years. And her dad was in the Army and overseas, and her mother was living with her aunt. And so we're both brand new to Alhambra. Right. Anyhow, so we were there through the war, and my dad constantly complained about California. He hated it. He wanted to get back to God's country. So 3 years, freshman, sophomore, junior, and the war ended. So he decided we're going back to God's country. And that was 45. I was ready to be the editor of the school newspaper, and they packed up. Yeah. And I didn't want to go, but anyhow, we went. Stop that a minute, will you? Give me a Kleenex, would you, dear? Or give me your handkerchief. I'll take your handkerchief. Yeah, I am.
I think you are.
I am particular. I love you.
Into the time of where Dell led her to Christ.
Anyhow, we moved back to Austin, Minnesota, and I had maintained a contact with the gal who was going to be the editor of their school newspaper, and I thought we were going to be there. And I told her what I'd been doing and so forth. Anyhow, before school started, we moved to Monona, Iowa, a town of 1,100 people. And
in one summer, you moved back to Minnesota and then from Minnesota to
yeah,
Iowa.
yeah.
Okay.
So when school started, I started at Monona, Iowa High School. And, oh well, that's beside the point.
That's within your senior year.
All this was it. And the young man that I was very much thought I was in love with was in the Coast Guard, and he came back and flew to Austin, Minnesota and spent his leave with me there with my folks.
What was
And
his name?
Mickey McMahon, Lawrence McMahon. But anyhow, then we moved. I mean, that's only a matter of 2 or 3 months we stayed there in Minnesota. So then we moved to Iowa. And and my class had a class of 32 students. And the school, it was such a small school that the superintendent of schools was right there all the time.
Right.
And he did not trust California girls or anybody from California. I thought they were all fast and loose. And, but I liked it. And anyhow, it was a pretty good year, and I made some friends. At the end of the war, my dad decided that wasn't God's country. We were coming back to California, but they had to sell the house. And I said, well, then, can I go back? I graduated. Can I go back to my class's graduation? And Dell's mom and dad said that I could stay there with them. So I flew back. I don't think I flew. I think I took the train. I don't know. And I was there for their graduation. And we started college, the two of us, and the man she eventually married, Al Doctorman, drove us to school every day. But he was so enamored of her, but he ran into another car one day. Anyhow, we went to Mount San Antonio College there, and it was fine. But then I met Al, and he was going to John Muir College. He had just gotten out of the Navy. And my folks finally came out and got a house there on Broadway in Temple City. So I moved in with them, and he picked me up from school every day at Pasadena City College. And so this goes into what, when was I married? 49, 50, 49? Anyhow, he'd pick me up every day after school and take me home. And then Dell and Al got very involved and with each other. And we lived there on Broadway. And one day he was there, and the other young man who had been from before that got home and drove in the driveway. Oh no, he was there, and then Al came and saw the other car there and knew that the other young man that I'd been dating before we moved left. And he zoomed out. I thought, I got to make a decision.
Oh, wow. They were fighting over you.
Yeah, well, he thought, why is he here? And I'm supposed to be taking her out. Well, actually, though, when I was there at Dell's house with her parents, she was going to Hollywood Bowl, to a Youth for Christ gathering where Billy Graham was speaking. And I didn't have a clue of what she was talking about. Not a clue. But I went. And Al was the blind date.
Ah, okay.
And she went with a young man who wanted to be a missionary.
This was before she'd met her Al.
Yes, yes. Or, no, this was after, but before it
okay.
became serious.
Okay.
I mean, it was all, she had these two guys going,
Okay.
and I had these two guys
Okay.
going. Oh, dear. Anyhow, I didn't have a clue what was going on at that rally there at the Hollywood Bowl. But we went home, and I had this blind date with Al, and I thought, well, I'll never hear from him again. But he was leaving in the next day or two because his younger brother was just getting out of the service, and his older brother was out, and they were going to drive across country. So he left, and I said, well, I'll never see him again. But a few weeks later, dear Dell led me to the Lord. And I got a postcard from Al from Washington, D.C. or somewhere back there saying, I'll look you up when I get home. I thought, well, that's funny. I thought I'd never see him again. And a gal who lives here in the Groves, what's her name? Anyhow, she was a student at Biola. She and her dear friend were leaders of the Navigators with the Bible verse thing. And she'd come over to Dell's house and would make sure we knew our Bible verses every week. And so I grew in the Lord. And when we moved here, I said, are you Glenna Clark that used to be at Biola and you came to our house every week to see if we were memorizing verse? 2 teenage girls. Yeah. I said, I was one of those girls.
Oh, that's so fun.
And anyhow, when Al came back, he called me. So we started dating. And began to get serious. I was 18. And my father was totally opposed. He says, you'll have a miserable life. He's amount to nothing. You'll have a terrible life. But we were insistent we'd get married, so we did. And Mother said, just don't get married on Friday the 13th. So naturally, I picked Friday the 13th of August, 1949. I think so.
It was.
And she had a fit. But, but we were married there at St. Gabriel Union Church with the punch and cake reception. And you took all the wedding gifts over to display them there at the church. I mean, that was part of the whole system.
Right.
But they were wrong, and I was right. And my mom, I don't think, ever forgave me for
For being right?
for getting married on Friday the 13th. I just didn't believe in all that stuff. You were supposed to walk under a ladder. You shouldn't step on a crack. All this crazy stuff. And
Were your parents believers?
no, not at that time. But they did come to the Lord there at San Gabriel Union Church.
Okay.
Later, both my parents, and I was very glad. But
Did your dad get over his dislike?
I don't think so. He said, I don't like the way he treats you. But anyhow, because he did a lot of laying of our carpets and doing all the stuff around the house and so forth.
Okay.
And then, anyhow, then Al was recalled during the Korean War. And I had little John, who was, 6 months old? Was he born at? Yeah. And then Nancy was born down there in the Navy hospital. So, anyhow, what else do you want to know?